6 of the 12 contenders clashed on the debate stage in Des Moines last night.
They addressed top issues like foreign policy, healthcare, impeachment, gender and politics, and sexism. Of course, this comes amid an ongoing feud between Senators Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders over whether a woman could beat President Trump. Ed O'Keefe has the very latest from Des Moines.
The dispute between Senators Warren and Sanders started on Monday and became a major flashpoint last night when the moderators brought it up. Remember, Warren says Sanders once told her that he doesn't think a woman could be elected president. Sanders disputed that.
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it.
Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, longtime allies, now say they remember a 2018 conversation differently.
Anybody knows me knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States.
What did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
I disagreed. Bernie is my friend, and I am not here to try to fight with Bernie. But look, this question about whether or not a woman can be president has been raised, and it's time for us to attack it head on. Can a woman beat Donald Trump? Look at the men on this stage. Collectively, they have lost 10 elections. The only people on this stage who have won every single election that they've been in are the women, Amy and me.
But that wasn't the end of it. After the debate, Warren and Sanders appeared to exchange words and parted ways without shaking hands, with Tom Steyer looking on. He described it to us afterward.
You could tell that the body language was a little awkward, right?
Yeah, I think they were trying to figure out something between the two of them, but I didn't really hear what it was.
On stage, the senators running for president made clear their stance on the upcoming impeachment trial.
This is a decency check on our government. This is a patriotism check.
It is about Donald Trump putting Donald Trump first.
The contenders also debated health care.
I think we need to be candid with voters. I think we have to tell them what we're going to do and what it's going to cost.
Climate change.
I would declare a state of emergency on day one on climate.
And a week after the United States came to the brink of war with Iran, the candidates also debated who had the best foreign policy experience.
We should not send anyone anywhere unless the overwhelming vital interests of the United States are at stake.
But what I understood right away in terms of the war in Iraq, the difference here is that the war in Iraq turned out to be the worst foreign policy blunder in the modern history of this country.
It's going to take a view to the future as well as the readiness to learn from the lessons of the past. And for me, those lessons of the past are personal.
Just 19 days remain now until the Iowa caucus, and today we enter uncharted territory because 3 contenders running for president who are also senators, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Amy Klobuchar, are being forced to leave the campaign trail, at least temporarily, to attend the impeachment trial back in Washington. That leaves Iowa all to Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, and other candidates. Will it be a factor? That remains to be seen. Anne-Marie and Vlad?
All right, Ed, thanks very much. For more on this, let's bring in CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns. She is joining us from Des Moines. All right, Caitlin. So who stood out last night? Did this debate offer any insight there? Because the sort of, you know, it's interesting to see the headlines this morning, you know, that this was sort of a snooze fest and this wasn't as exciting. And I'm thinking, like, that's not what people care about, exciting, what looks good on television. People care about the issues. People care about, if you're a Democrat, you want to see a Democrat elected president in 2020. And if you're listening for various differences in policy proposals, you probably got it last night.
You know, Vlad and Anne-Marie, we're just 19 days away from the Iowa caucuses. And yes, all of these candidates are counting down to the day because this is really critical crunch time for a lot of them. So this debate really matters for a lot of folks. We've been talking to voters on the ground at events, and they said that they were going to be watching this debate. They've been seeing these candidates come into this state and across the state for several months now. But now is really the time that voters are starting to get around to the idea of really starting to make their decision. Remember, a couple of months ago, we're talking to voters. They can name 3 or 4 candidates that they are interested in. Now they're starting to narrow that field. So when you're looking at the debate, yes, they covered a lot of issues that they've covered in past debates, but you have to consider that for some of these voters, this might be the first time that they're listening to it in a way that helps them really make this decision. And it covered a wide variety of topics. What was most interesting, I think, aside from this clash between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, which I know we'll talk about in a minute here, Foreign policy was a dominant topic of discussion, and we really haven't seen that in past debates. Instead, they've been focused on healthcare, the economy, and climate change. And that comes, of course, as the president's decision about Iran has come really into the forefront of this race. And voters are starting to think about that in their decision making. And these candidates are trying to make this an audition for commander-in-chief.
So to this clash between Warren and Sanders, the clash aside, sort of the central question has to do with electability, right? Democrats want someone who they believe can beat the president. They also want someone who, they agree on the issues, but overwhelmingly they want to make sure that this person can beat President Trump. And whether or not a woman is electable, is this still a debate here for the Democratic Party? After all, Bernie Sanders pointed out that though Hillary Clinton lost, she did win the popular vote.
Now, this comes at a time that we've been noticing that voters this cycle have become kind of mini pundits. They're very strategic about their decision because, as you say, defeating Donald Trump for these voters is the top priority. So you're seeing them really agonize over this decision. And we have heard from voters, even from women voters, this anxiety a little bit that they express about the electability of a woman because of 2016. Now, as Bernie Sanders and all of these candidates have noted, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. But this, I think, brought this into a new phase in the campaign. And it was interesting to see Elizabeth Warren really turn this into potentially an advantage for her, because that's what we were wondering heading into last night, whether this might backfire on her. She did say there was a notable moment in that debate that both women on that stage were the only ones who had won every election that they ran in. And so she was really trying to put this argument to rest. And we saw from a lot of Democrats that they were endeared to that argument. But we also know that voters do not want this infighting among the candidates, especially on the progressive side. The Bernie Sanders campaign really wanted to go into last night focused on Joe Biden, especially his record on foreign policy, and trying to consolidate the progressive wing of the party to take on the more moderate wing. And so we were hearing from outside progressive groups and activists that they didn't want Sanders and Warren to escalate that tension between them. And so on the debate stage, during the debate, they tried to kind of de-escalate it. But I don't know if you guys saw that moment after the debate. This now infamous non-handshake has really raised some more questions about whether this relationship is in fact frayed.
Yeah, and so the question then becomes, will this clash between Senator Sanders and Senator Warren dent Bernie Sanders' front-runner status? He's leading going into the Iowa caucuses. I wonder, and I think, Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw a statistic that said he raised a lot of money during this last debate.
He did. The campaign said that they raised about $1.7 million. I think that was the number. So Bernie Sanders supporters were very defensive of Sanders, and this could have the effect of kind of rallying them again to their cause. He has a very strong base of support, and he's been able to maintain that. And we see that in the polling, that he's doing very well when we look at these early states. And so, this could have the potential to maybe animate both sides, and we'll see kind of how voters start to internalize this. But for Bernie Sanders, he wanted to make clear that his takeaway from that discussion was not the same as Warren's, that he made clear that he does think a woman can be elected president, noting that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns for us in Des Moines, Iowa. Caitlin, as always, we thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much.